We're doing some more animals. We've got 3 labs of animals, and this week we're going to be doing more animals that are in the category of protostomes. Protostomes, let me write that. Protostomes. To be a protostome means what? Well, let's go back to the concept of embryology. Embryology. One of the things that is true about animals in general is that they go through embryology, which means that they start as a single cell and then they became this predictable hollow ball of cells, and then they go through different phases. Now, you might imagine that if you saw a human in development, that it would look entirely different from looking at maybe a starfish during development. And you would be surprised. Actually, one of the things that is a confirmation of the concept of evolution is that in the early stages are all shared by different kinds of animals. So now, protostome. I told you originally that we were going to talk about this, that once you're this hollow ball of cells, and then it's like there's this finger, that's supposed to be a finger, that kind of pushes inward, okay? And then originally it helped develop an incomplete digestive tract, like we see in some of the platyhelminthes. And then finally, if that invisible finger pushes all the way through, then there'd be, let me get a different color pen. Then it goes all the way through. That's not a good color either. Go to green, okay? It goes all the way through. And so then you'd have this tube that goes all the way through. Then you've got a complete digestive tract, like the nematode from last week. At a certain point in your development, you're going to need to pick, okay, out of the 2 ends of the tube, which one is going to be your mouth? And all of the animals that we've discovered so far and that we're talking about today, they are all protostomes, and they decided that the first opening was going to be their mouth. Alrighty. Another thing to remember from last week is about coeloms or body cavities. Remember the platyhelminthes, the flatworms, had no body cavities. The nematodes have a pseudocoelom, and starting with the animals we're looking at this week, everyone's got a true coelom or a true body cavity, including the annelids, which are the segmented worms. But where are we going to start? We're going to start here with the mollusks. In this week's lab, we do the mollusks, the annelids, and the arthropods. The mollusks might be my favorite of those, right? Mollusks. Mollusks are soft-bodied animals, and most are protected by a hard shell, but I think the most interesting ones actually aren't. We'll talk about that. There are 3 major classes of mollusks. The first class of mollusks we'll talk about are the gastropods. Gastropod means stomach foot. I don't know why they call them that. Lots and lots of gastropods are protected by a spiral shell. And if they're protected by a spiral shell, like that kind of a shell, then we call them snails. A snail that no longer has a spiral shell or never got one, we actually often refer to as a slug. Slugs and snails are very closely related to each other. They are gastropods. Slugs and snails, all of the gastropods, they can live in the ocean, they can live on dry land, and they can also live in fresh water. They can live out in the air, and they can live their entire lives underwater. When we think of gastropods, we think of snails, and we think of very slow things that just kind of eat decomposing plant matter and the bacteria that are feeding on the plant matter. And you're not wrong. Lots of gastropods do that. But there are other gastropods that do surprising things. For example, there is a snail called the cone snail that actually is a predator of fish. Now, you would imagine it would be very difficult for a snail to chase and catch a fish, and you would be right, but cone snails don't do that. Cone snails have got this little tooth-like thing called a harpoon, and they shoot it out of their body and it spears the fish, and there is venom in the harpoon that paralyzes and confuses the fish, and then they just reel it in and they swallow the fish whole. So that's a cone snail. Crazy, right? How do most gastropods eat? Gastropods, like a typical snail in your garden, they have got a whole bunch of these teeth in a structure called a radula. And that radula scrapes the plant material and brings it into their little mouths. The radula is on the bottom of the foot. That's how a typical snail will eat. How does a typical snail move? Well, that foot part is very muscular, and it secretes mucus that gets called slime. And the slime makes whatever surface they're crawling across very smooth. And then it's just the muscular contractions of that foot that moves them along the surface of the slime. Fascinating creatures. Oh, one more thing. Snails, most gastropods, are hermaphrodites, but they still reproduce sexually. So if you get two garden snails together, both of them are hermaphrodites, and they will just trade packages of sperm. They're like, here, you can have my sperm. If I can have your sperm, thank you very much. And so they reproduce sexually, even though they are hermaphrodites. The second category of mollusks are the bivalves. Bi means two, they've got two shells. Bivalves can be free living and they swim around. I mean, they don't swim all the time like a fish does, but they hang out in one place and they open up their valves and they will filter feed by sucking ocean water across their gills. And as they suck ocean water across their gills, they get oxygen from the water, and then they also use those gills to separate out food from the water. So they'll filter feed. And then if they're like, I don't like it here anymore, they can like and kind of swim away by slapping their shells together, right? So that's a bivalve. There are also bivalves that remain attached to their environment and they don't go anywhere, like oysters. Oysters are the kind of bivalves that you will see attached to the posts of a pier. So bivalves have got divided shells. And then there are the best of the mollusks, which are the cephalopods. Cephalopod means head, foot. Cephalo means head, pod means foot, and I don't know why they call them that. Cephalopods have either no shell at all or a very reduced shell. The ones that have a very reduced shell are the squids. The squid is a cephalopod. It's got a very reduced shell. Cuttlefish, they've got a reduced shell. And for the squid and the cuttlefish, their shells are inside. And then there is the octopus, and the octopus has no shell at all. The cephalopods are the smartest of the invertebrates. And I've got a couple of videos for you to watch about the octopus. Researchers are trying to figure out, well, how smart is an octopus? And how smart is an animal is a difficult question to try and study. But most scientists believe the octopus is as smart as a dog. Many of them think that an octopus might be smarter than a dog and could even be self-aware. Very difficult thing to prove if we don't have a language, but an interesting concept. So cephalopods. 3 classes of mollusks: the gastropods, slugs and snails, they're hermaphrodites. The bivalves, clams, free-living, oysters attached to stuff. Some of them are hermaphrodites. A lot of them have male and female sexes. And the cephalopods, the squid and the octopus. This video down here is a video about a behavior called mimicking. This video is an old video, and they're talking about something they're calling a mimic octopus. At the time that they discovered this behavior, where an octopus could pretend to be a poisonous fish, or pretend to be a sea snake, or pretend to be other things, when they were looking at that, they thought they had discovered a special type of octopus. But now it seems that this is a behavior that many octopus have. Octopus can do some really smart things. Once you start doing YouTube videos of smart things octopus can do, you will go down a rabbit hole that'll keep you from your studies for quite a while. One video I strongly recommend is actually a movie that was released this September and is on Netflix now, called My Octopus Teacher. And it conveys the remarkable nature of the intelligence of the octopus in a very compelling way, with some really interesting videos. So the octopus, there are male and female octopus. They are not hermaphrodites. There's an interesting book about the intelligence of squid, whose name escapes me, where the scientists are using the squid as an example of the possible development of language and the theory of mind. So lots of interesting stuff about mollusks. All righty, we will pick up and talk about the annelids, which are the segmented worms, in the next video.